Hello, and welcome to The Queer Gaze, a gay movie podcast dedicated to examining queer representation and issues.
Today, we're dropping a special bonus episode on James Krishna Floyd and Sally L. Hosaini's drag romance film, Unicorns. If you want to hear more of the discussion, including our Chili Pepper Award, please support The Queer Gaze at patreon.com/thequeergaze.
You'll also get early access to regular main feed episodes and extra content for every single episode, including, additional stuff for this particular film.
And you can follow us on social media at The Queer Gaze.
Okay, so Conrad, as you said, a special new release episode. What is Unicorns?
Well, Unicorns is a British romantic drama that follows Luke, a single father and mechanic in a working-class town, whose life takes an unexpected turn when he discovers a doorway into Narnia at the bottom of a restaurant while looking for a toilet, and discovers Aisha, a glamorous and confident South Asian drag performer. As their connection deepens, Luke is forced to confront his identity, his desires, and the boundaries of masculinity and tradition. The film explores themes of love, acceptance, and self-discovery across cultural and gender lines.
Okay, so folks, this is the spoiler-free edition of this. If you want to hear all of our thoughts, as we mentioned, yes, please do join the Patreon at patreon.com/thequeergaze. But Conrad, I'm curious, what is your spoiler-free take on this film? Would you recommend it?
It's an interesting one. It's one of these ones where you say to yourself, well, if you're just looking for a solid romance that's set in perhaps a social milieu that you're not terribly familiar with and that you would like to explore, or perhaps if you will feel seen through watching this movie, for example, because it does explore, as I say, a social milieu that hasn't necessarily been depicted in film terribly often, certainly not British film, then yes, I think you'll get a lot out of this. If you've seen a lot of queer romances, I'm not sure it brings that much new to the table, to be honest.
No, that's kind of my take as well. And I really struggled with this because I think at the end of the day, this is a perfectly fine. This is probably about a 3 out of 5 for me. You know, I didn't mind watching it, although I will admit, I think the runtime is way too long for what the film is actually doing. It's another one of these. We're taking about 2 hours to explore something in not quite as much detail as I would have liked. But you're right. I think the representation is one of the big things that critics seem to latch onto in the film. So we are talking about Indian Muslim representation. We're talking about the drag community. And I think one of the most interesting things about this film, which weirdly enough, the synopsis that you pulled seems to run counter to, but we're actually not interrogating gender and identity, at least not in the conventional way. Like we're not putting a label on it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I think James Krishna Floyd, an actor and directing for the first time with his partner, Sally L. Hosaini, who's a seasoned veteran, having 3 films under her belt at this point. But he mentions, because he's the writer, the principal writer on this, that he was very keen to depict something that doesn't focus on labels and hashtags and boxing yourself in, that he wanted to explore something that was a little bit more fluid than that. And in fact, there is one key moment when Luke discovers that Aisha is not a woman, that he tries to put a label on it, and Aisha summarily rejects it.
Yes, she says, "My only pronouns are icon and legend."
Yes. One of the many great lines that she has in the movie, actually. I did quite enjoy the dialogue.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Jason Patel, this is his big breakout role, and I think that he is really one to watch. I was happy to see that he's receiving a lot of accolades for his performance. But yeah, I wanted to expand on what Floyd said, because we got, a screener for this, or I did, because the movie is only just coming out here in North America. I gathered it's been out for a little bit in the UK. But in the press notes for the film, Floyd says, "This movie is about the struggle to fight against the reductive labels that mainstream society forces upon us. I struggle with my identity being turned into a hashtag. I am often forced into a single, simplified category, whilst rarely acknowledged for my complexity. I am brown and white, working class and middle class, agnostic and spiritual, fluid and straight, masculine and feminine. We must think less in terms of or and more in terms of and." And I really like that. And I will confess, I think that was the most interesting part of the film to me. There's a sweet love story about a very blokey white Essex boy who falls in love with a drag queen, and they have to kind of figure things out. But I feel like people get swept up in the romance. And as you said, if you've seen much queer media, this is going to feel very, very familiar. So the way that they don't address the labels was one of the more innovative aspects of the film for me.
It was, but it does mean that at the same time you are introducing the audience to perhaps a world that they've not seen before. Mm-hmm. But then not interrogating it in any meaningful way, which I found frustrating because I really wanted to get into the meat of it.
Yes, yeah. I do feel like it's both the strength and the weakness of the film at the end of the day. I don't think this is a huge spoiler from what we've been discussing, but the fact that Luke never really processes the fact that he clearly is not usually attracted to other men, and yet does find himself in this circumstances falling for Aisha. And I'm like, okay, but we're not going to have a conversation about that. You're not going to have, literally, we see an Adam's apple after a kiss, and we spiral for about 2 seconds, and then the rest of the film is just, oh, I guess we're falling in love. And I found it perplexing. I was just like, I don't think this is the way it would actually play out for most people. They would need to work through their identity crisis.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, they do try to graduate it a little bit more than that. I mean, he initially spits and, has a physical repulsion to what has just happened.
Yeah.
And then later on is just, he reacts violently to the suggestion because he starts driving Aisha to her gigs because she falls out with her current chauffeur. She doesn't drive herself. And he reacts violently to someone suggesting that they are a couple.
Yeah.
So he still reacts violently to other people, if not to Aisha anymore. And then slowly over time it gets worn down. So it's a little bit more nuanced. But again, he's not interrogated. We're not hearing his thoughts. We're not seeing them. We're not seeing a development. It's just all of a sudden there is a moment where things just have to happen. And we'll talk about that in the Patreon bonus.
Oh my God. Yeah, I won't lie. The film sets up a number of potential crises on the horizon. And, on Horror Queers and on Movie Oubliette, we're both prone to saying, and this is a Chekhov's whatever, because we know for sure this will come back. And again, I think one of the film's strengths, but also one of its weaknesses, is that it sets up multiple instances of that where, okay, well, how long until his father is going to find out about this romance? How long until his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend with whom he has a child, and we're discussing custody arrangements, finds out? And neither one of those things come to pass. And again, I don't think that's a spoiler because I don't think the film is legitimately interested in it. And I was happy that we don't have to go in that direction because that would have felt a little cliche. But it also seems weird to then introduce it as though, oh, well, this is the axe that's hanging over the romance. And then it just never falls.
Yeah, it sets up those kinds of tensions for both characters. Because in the case of Aisha or Ashik, going home, he has a very traditional family. His father is clearly not going to accept him for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
The mother, I think, does. I think it's one of those funny moments where the mother seems to enjoy the aspects of Ashikin or Aisha that she can relate to.
Right.
So there's, the clothes, the makeup, the movies that they enjoy watching together, but immediately asks whether he has a female partner in the horizon. So she's willing to sort of enjoy who he is, but then not willing to face up to what that means.
Right.
So you have that tension set up that, yes, does not get resolved. You have, in Luke's case, not only the ex-wife, you've got the father, you've got the son who's set up as having behavioral difficulties at school.
Yeah.
There are all these things, and also a best friend that I really want to talk about, perhaps in the Patreon bonus. There are all these things that are just set up as pressures that are going to lead somewhere.
Yes.
And the film, as you say, is just not interested in resolving any of them.
Yeah. And part of me doesn't know whether to laud that as surprising and innovative, because that would have been the conventional way to take it, and we have definitely seen those films before, and yet there's something mildly unsatisfying about introducing them and then not really doing anything with it. Maybe that is a little more true to life, where things don't get resolved and wrapped up with a neat little bow at the end of 2 hours. But I have to say, as an audience member, I found myself left a little wanting at the end of the film.
Yeah, which for a film with this runtime is criminal, really.
Yeah.
You're right. I think probably the more innovative thing to do would have been to have set them up as potential problems and then resolve them in an interesting way that would have defied convention and the obvious, they're discovered kissing, commence screaming montage. It would have been interesting for people to show nuance and depth and complexity, but we don't. Right. We just forget them.
Yeah, or even do that, but do it early in the film so that it's not the third act, crisis that we usually see in a traditional romantic comedy or romantic drama, because that's very much what this is. It's an opposites attract. I didn't even know that you existed. As you said, I opened the door into magical Gaysian Narnia and discovered a world I wasn't a part of, and then suddenly it becomes everything. And I think if you are looking for just a sweet opposites attract romance, this will mostly do it, because I think the two leads have good chemistry. And it's kind of nice to watch them discover this part of themselves that maybe they didn't realize they could feel or access. Like, you bring something unique out in me. That's lovely. And I enjoyed that part. But yeah, honestly, the runtime was a huge barrier for me, because by the time I got to the end of the film, I thought, we just didn't accomplish that much.
Yeah, no, we didn't. You're absolutely right in terms of the two leads, though. Ben Hardy, who is an actor that I know from British soap operas and other
EastEnders. Whereas I know him from erotic thriller The Voyeurs, which is a film I would recommend, but I think you would secretly hate it, Conrad.
Or perhaps not so secretly, who knows?
If you want to see his butt, you can check that action out.
Okay. Well, I think he's particularly good in this as the Essex boy that has to confront all of these aspects of his identity. And I really believe that he is amazed and captivated by Jason Patel. And on the other end of the seesaw, Jason Patel is definitely worthy of that captivation, because he is great. And he really is the unicorn of the movie. I mean, they had a huge casting challenge trying to find Aisha. And they were very lucky to find him, and this is his debut, and he's fantastic in it. Because not only does he have to carry a very complex and multifaceted dramatic role, he also has to be a great performer, and I thought he was.
Oh, yes. I think the performances of what we see of this Gaysian show, which, by the way, folks, I had a lot of reticence about using that term because it honestly sounds like a slur to me. And Conrad and I had a back and forth about, is this appropriate for us to use because we're not members of this community? But then I gathered in the press notes and all of the other reviews, it is being deployed, in part because I think this is a unique aspect of specifically the London scene. So when we say Gaijin. This is a group of mostly closeted rich men who come out to party with these very female-presenting drag queens who are principally from Indian and Muslim communities. So it's highly transactional in terms of we're paying you to show up at these parties and dance. It's not sex work because, as far as we know, they're not sleeping with these men. But it is kind of an underground counterculture, secret society kind of vibe.
Yeah, and it has to be. And that's one part of the movie where I got really interested. I think it's sort of towards the end of the first act where you're really getting a sense of the pressure that Aisha is under, the death threats that she's getting.
Right.
The fact that she's told by her brother that people are talking about her back home, the fact that she has nowhere to run to because if she goes back to her parents, then it's not necessarily going to be an open arms of acceptance situation there. So that I found really interesting, but then it comes to a crisis point.
Yeah.
That I was a little bit uncertain about because it felt like a cliche about that community.
I agree, and I want to talk about that and then a very unexpected moment of violence in the Patreon because the movie has some really big swings. Sometimes they're very unexpected. I think some people would argue, no, they are being set up in advance and it's just a matter of whether or not you're paying attention. But the movie definitely goes to places I was not prepared for.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that it sits well in the tone of the romantic comedy.
No. Okay, well, I feel like that's a great tease, so maybe this is our cue to end our spoiler, or mostly spoiler-free review. So folks, as we mentioned, hop over to Patreon at patreon.com/thequeergaze for a little bit more. We do have bonus episodes on every single title that we have covered up to this point, so it's about 16 or 17 episodes. You're usually getting about an equal amount of bonus content, and it's all just about $3 a month.
Head on over there.
Yeah, and if you don't, then hopefully this whetted your appetite to check out the film, and we will be back next week with a regular episode where we're talking about Bruce LaBruce's Saint Narcisse as we wrap up our family drama theme.
And this one's a strong one.
Oh boy, yeah.